All right. So with that as a background and the opportunities that are starting to become increasingly available for us with stories, we're going to invite our panelists to join us. And while you're getting settled, I'll briefly introduce you. You're going to sit next to me.
All right.
So we're joined by Whitney Little from Issuu magazine, Antonia Sutter from sisterMag, Rolf Leer from Quoted, and Patrick Janelle from a guy named Patrick. So what we have is a really amazing group of folks who represent content and storytelling from around the globe, actually, from Europe and New York and elsewhere that are incorporating content and telling stories with their publications. So again, welcome. Really happy to have all of you with us. So what I thought we could do is just start off very briefly with your own personal introductions, and more than just your name and company. What I think would be a great way to start is just tell us very briefly about your publication and your media business, and really what's inspiring you to keep creating and distributing content. What wakes you up every day around the content that you have to share?
I'm Whitney Little. I oversee social media for The Knot. It is the #1 wedding planning resource. And if you think about The Knot, you can see our magazine, but we also have an app. We have a very strong social media feed. So there's a lot going on in what I do every day. And we have a cyclical audience, people who are coming in who might be dating someone and wanting to be engaged. There's a lot of those. Someone who is engaged, and then people who are married but just want to look at wedding content all day, which is also great. I love all of them equally. And so we're trying to figure out how to speak to these users where they are. So every morning I wake up and try to figure out how do I get them to maybe create a registry with us, or maybe they want to book their vendor, or maybe they're looking at engagement rings. We don't know where they are in that process. So I'm trying to figure out how to speak to all these people where they are every day.
Hello, my name is Antonia. I'm probably the one from furthest away. I'm from Berlin. And we are a women's magazine, actually one of the leading digital women's magazine from Germany. And we started off in 2012. And it was actually a project from my sister from her publishing course. And it was about how does the female magazine of the future in a digital age look like. And so she did this theoretical thing, and we started to say it should be easy in the future, but we have to prove it. So we published the issue, just the two sisters of us, and then 70,000 people read it. And we said, okay, there is something. Maybe we should do that and continue with it. And so now 6 years later, we still do it. And now we are a team, and we work for now the 45th issue, and we work with partners to monetize it, from L'Oreal to Ford and to IT Cosmetics. And so what makes me go in the office in the morning is that people actually like content, and they like our content, and they like to have this inspiration that and to read stories about women and about inspiring women every day when they open a magazine. And so that's what we try to achieve every day, to bring inspiring stories to readers of our magazine.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm Rolf. I'm the founder of Quoted magazine, and we call Quoted a love letter to New York from the people who live here. So we feature 10 New Yorkers in each issue from their homes to get intimate, up and close with them, have them share narratives from their lives and perspectives on New York. It's a very unfiltered take on the city through the eyes of the people that live here. So it started off being something that we targeted towards the Airbnb travelers that want to learn from and about local people. We also see that it resonates a lot with local New Yorkers because it reminds them of why they choose to call New York home. It's a print magazine, that's kind of like the basis of it, but then we also now focus more on everything digital, and we distribute in a lot of hotels, 5 airlines, 150 coffee shops. I love to wake up every morning and think that I can raise the voice of regular and unregular people that have a story to share. So I think that must be the answer to that. Yes.
My name is Patrick Janelle. Many people know me through my Instagram handle, which, as you mentioned, is a guy named Patrick. And above and beyond it being my Instagram handle, it is the name of my business. I'm fortunate enough to be one of many who's taken a platform on Instagram and turned that presence into a full business through working with brand partnerships on Instagram, and also the opportunities that provides me to have an audience to do many activities outside of Instagram as well. You mentioned I did win at one point an award for the Fashion Instagrammer of the Year. That was from the CFDA. It's been a couple years now. I think that was 2014 or 15. And at that time, I was really kind of on the forefront of using Instagram in a way that I think now many of us are used to, which is this as a human, as an individual, this sort of this combination of it being a diary of your day-to-day life, but also a somewhat elevated look at what that can be in a way that many people might be gaining inspiration from as well. So I was kind of on the forefront of this world that is Instagram marketing as an individual. Obviously, there's a whole industry of influencers and everything that entails. So I've really kind of seen what that is like from just growing as an individual into that space, and now how that can translate into both capitalizing that as an individual, but also the relationship that I have with a lot of publishers, with a lot of brands, and how we're working together to create content, both on my feed, on stories, other platforms, IRL, in events that I host with various partners as well. I moved to New York about 7 years ago, so in some definitions it's a lifetime, in some definitions that was yesterday. And I still feel like every morning I get up and I'm just ready to, this city is exciting. This city inspires me. In addition to all of the travel that I do and I'm fortunate to do around the world, every day I get up to discover something new. And it's ultimately those discoveries that I want to document, and I want to share with the people that are following me, so that hopefully I can inspire others in the ways that I've been inspired.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Yeah, clap, you can clap. It used to be not too long ago that creators had a particular medium. We were a magazine publisher, we were a movie maker, we were a television creator, we were an event creator, and or an IRL creator, right? And now what we're seeing across the board is most people and businesses involved in content are crossing all of these different mediums without being limited. And Rolf, I'd love to hear more from you on your thoughts related to that. Particularly, we just launched this story with you that incorporates pages from your magazine that started off as print, and now with you turning it into a digital experience that transcends even what's on the pages. So curious to start with you, but everyone's viewpoint on how this experience of transcending a particular medium is manifesting in your content and your business. The business piece is just as important.
Well, congratulations on launching this feature. It looks great. So, we're looking forward to explore that more and be playful with what you launched.
So
I think because we are, we have a 360 approach to content. We do video interviews with all of the people that we're featuring, and photographs and written narratives. So to be able to share that on social media in a simpler way than having like a professional team that needs to spend hours and hours and hours to make something look professional, I think that's going to be very beneficial for us as a magazine. So I think, yeah, in that way, this is going to be very, very good for Quoted, and to grow our audience in, you know, just the way that we can share things. It's been a little bit difficult in the past to tie in the video content with the photographs and the written content. It makes sense for us because we want to be able to kind of capture a lot of different aspects of the person that we're visiting. But so to make sure, or to do it this way, I think can become our way forward when it comes to sharing the content that's in the written or in the printed magazine. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Curious how both of you are thinking about, again, sort of the smorgasbord of content that now can become available that you're using to communicate and share your story. How do you think about the ways in which print, pages, digital, et cetera, are all coming together, both from the content side and kind of how you're incorporating that into the revenue and business creating side too?
Okay, yeah, I mean, we just have a ton of content in general. You know, the print side, we are, as I mentioned, we have the app. So how am I talking to my audience every day and presenting editorial advice? How am I showing them where to go next in their wedding planning process? So this stories for me has been kind of a catch-all. On Instagram, just as a post, it's very inspirational. They'll bookmark it and say, you know, this is the venue I want, or these are the flowers that I want. On Facebook, we will direct them to links so they can read about wedding planning advice. But on stories, we've been able to send people from a traffic perspective to read those articles, but then we're also able to say, you know, hey, here's our new issue out now. Do you need a wedding videographer? Yes or no? You can vote. Now swipe up to read our take. What registry item would you rather register for? A KitchenAid mixer or a vacuum? They always say KitchenAid mixer, by the way. You know, and
But
now
they all need a vacuum, right?
they all need the vacuum. They don't all need the KitchenAid mixer, but they want it. And then, you know, swipe up, create your registry. So there's so many places. I feel like a conductor all day sending people to different areas. So stories has kind of been that spot where I can catch them all versus like a Facebook or an Instagram post. And it's also a great way to get that instant user feedback through questions or polls or things like that.
Are you making money from stories yet?
Yeah, from a sales perspective, we have sponsors that'll jump in. They're not fully sold on it yet. I don't know if everyone else is experiencing that. They want that placement in our Instagram feed. They think it's more valuable to be there forever versus the 24 hours in our Instagram story feed. But although that to me is the higher ROI. And I keep trying to explain that. I think they'll get there, but there's just so much more engagement on an Instagram story. There's so much more interaction. And you can swipe up to their page directly. Our users tend to be a little lazy when it comes to looking at a photo and wanting to click out to the link in the bio. That's a much harder path for them to take versus swiping up. So I recommend it all the time. We're getting there, but that's how we're making our money.
Yeah, for us it's similar, and what I would like to add is that stories give the opportunity to go away from the polished pictures that Instagram feed has, or even a Facebook post has. So we can give more behind the scenes, more real life in between the stories. So if we, for example, have a cover shooting, in the end you have 2 images that come out of a shooting that lasts a day, and where you have so much content, so much interaction, and so much wealth of stories in a way. So what we try is to bring that behind the scenes look into the stories and create kind of the story of the picture. And so that is one way how the stories has enhanced the whole issue in a sense.
It's interesting you mentioned that later on today we're going to be diving more into reality television, and a lot of that is also the story behind the story, right? That creates a much larger, engaging kind of experience.
Yes, definitely.
Does the story behind the story, is there a business related to that for you?
Yeah, kind of. So far, it's mostly a package. Like our advertisers, partners want to have like the full package. They have a magazine part in it, but they also want to have the social media part. And they are also a bit reluctant with the Insta story thing, but we kind of try to get them to it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Patrick, love your thoughts on this, particularly for you. You're an individual, you're a brand as a, and you're building your own brand, right? And you're doing it across a range of different mediums with your blog and travel. And in fact, in your case, even just getting on an airplane is part of your brand experience, right? So curious to hear how you think about building your own brand right now with stories and just additional content as well.
Well, I mean, you know, one of the reasons that this whole world that I'm a part of has occurred is because we have these tools, Instagram, all the social media platforms, Issuu even, all of these things. It's just as easy for an individual as it is for a publisher or a larger team. So there's so many ways that you can be telling your story, and I really do love to think about each platform and what is the best use of that platform. You talked a little bit. You mentioned briefly that the Instagram feed has kind of found its place as that sort of like hero shot of the story, right? This is like where the beautiful moment, that sort of like the best image from this moment is happening. Whereas stories is a place where you can get a little bit more down and dirty. You can, as I like to say, you can kind of show the dirty dishes. All of these different mediums offer a place for you to show a different take. I started a newsletter at the beginning of this year, or earlier in the spring. For me, that's also an opportunity to kind of dive into some longer form content that I don't always have the chance to do on an Instagram post. And my newsletter comes out weekly, so I'm able to kind of take some of the highlights from my week and dive in a little bit deeper. And that's also a slightly different format than what I have on my website, which for me specifically, is less of a blog and more of a, first of all, city guides, and also a place to kind of have some evergreen content related to my travels, some of my favorite destinations, hotels, restaurants, and that sort of thing. So for me, it's really about looking at each different platform. Who am I? What am I trying to say? What is my brand? And that's going to be completely different than who I'm sitting next to. And therefore, how do I use those platforms to be able to tell the story that's resonating with me and resonating with my followers?
Did your parents think they were raising a brand?
My parents had no idea what they were getting into, but I think they knew that from a very young age.
So,
by the way, my parents love it. The only reason that my parents know anything about my life is because they follow me religiously on
There you
social
go.
media.
Right.
So
See?
they're fine.
So in a way, we're all the counterintuitives, right? 3, 4, 5 years ago, the prevailing thinking was all that's going to happen are people are online. They're just going to watch. People aren't going to be reading anymore. They're not going to be diving deep into content that they care about. It's all about lists, and it's all about snippet stuff, right? The SPPs, the shallow publishing platforms. You're all certainly bucking the trend, and you're catering to huge audiences in different areas of content and culture that are going along with you, and we are seeing it in this room and all over the world. Curious how you think about being a longer form creator and how you see your position in the world of content, particularly against the world of lists and shorter form stuff.
I'm really lucky in the sense that the audience at the Knot actually does want to read. This is one of the biggest days of their life that they're prepping for, and so they want all the information. That being said, they love a list. I mean, they'll never not click on like 7 reasons why, blah, 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 and those quick little bullet points. They're into it. But then they'll also sit and really do their research because they want to make sure they're spending money on the right thing and making the right decisions and having their guests talk about this unbelievable party that they threw. That being said, we also do have to send them those quick bits of content to keep them engaged. Some days they want to read a full article, other days they just want to ask us a quick question. So what's been great about, the different features of Instagram stories are the questions. So you can ask something anonymously, which is great for some of these couples who are planning things and have very specific questions that they don't want any of their family members to know they asked. So we'll do Wedding Wednesdays every week with our editors, and they'll ask these questions, and they roll in. There's literally thousands of them. And so they're very particular. They have these very specific things they want to know, and we will answer them quickly for them and anonymously. But other than that, they want a deep dive. When they're coming to plan their wedding, they're on a mission, and they're fully invested in us as a brand. And when they're focused, which is really great.
What we found is the mixture is like the secret to it. So you have to have articles that are longer, that give a bit of a background. And of course, you have to mix it up with maybe features that are more picture heavy and who kind of tell a visual story. So, and then you have to find the right moment, the right like lane, how to get the story to the person in the right moment. So maybe on a weekend. We also use a newsletter format. So you see that the newsletter, for example, has a longer lifetime. So people go back to it when they have time, and then they dive deep into the stories that have more meat to the bone. And so in between, it might be more a visual treat. And so it's the mixture and the right timing that makes it possible.
Yeah, I think that today the attention span that we're all having, or the majority of people, is insanely short. And I would like to stand on the barricades for making sure that when we all have a mental breakdown, we have something to come back to where we can actually sit down and read something and enjoy that for a little bit longer.
But is it really short? Is part of the question. Like, actually, I think you're all representing. Yeah, you're representing that. On one hand, it's short, but actually, there is this interest in the longer form stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, we also see that people enjoy reading something that's tactile and where they can sit down on a coffee shop and, just be able to calm down a little bit, because they spend hours and hours on their phone and just being almost manically on that device. So I do think that we provide something of value when it comes to just slowing down a little bit. At the same time, I want to say that, the content that we have in Quoted, every quote is a narrative by itself, so it's also easy for people to flip through, and then you can read something that's very short. You don't need to read everything through to get content or to get like a concept of what's there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I've never had extremely long-form content because really my world has been Instagram for so long and social media. But I think that two things that I'm hearing. One is that each medium kind of has its own reason. But when it's the medium, it's the time of day, it's how you're engaging that's going to determine if this is going to be like, a short listicle or image heavy or long form. And I think there's room for all of that, mostly because our platforms are dictating that, our platforms and the usage. However, one thing that I think a lot about, it maybe more long form and a kind of more like macro level, is what am I actually, like at the core, what am I saying? What is this brand that I'm creating? What is my long-term goal for the future? Especially somebody like me whose life is basically dependent upon Instagram. And we all know that as wonderful as Instagram is, it will not be here forever, or at least will not be the driving force forever. What am I doing to make sure that the story that I'm actually telling in my life and as a brand is sort of long form? So it's sort of in the moment, taking advantage of all these opportunities that we have to use all of the tools in the way that is good. But also, we're the creators. I think the challenge is that we could be at the risk of letting these platforms drive us, and then we're standing on this barricade being like, oh shit, like what did we do to ourselves? Ultimately, we need to take the responsibility to both use these platforms in the way that people are using them, but also make sure that that as writers and as content producers, that we're saying something that has more meaning and that has a longer lifespan, so that people are continued, our audiences are continued to learn that behavior as well. So maybe that's not exactly answering the question, but I think that it's our responsibility to make sure that we're still providing that, for our sanity, for our culture.
I love that notion of a legacy, right? Is and that we're not just creating in the moment. It's so easy in this day and age to get lost in just the moment of what's being created. I often think about, like, Mick Jagger. I don't know that he thought when he first got started he was going to be doing this for more than a year or two, right? And lo and behold, we have a 50-year singing career and celebrity career. And I think it's the same way. Like it's not just about one song that was sung in the early 60s. It's about creating a legacy of how your content is going to be consumed. And in that way, it's not only long form, but it's long legacy of meaning, right, that you're communicating. So we have a few minutes left, and before we end, I would love to get some insight from each of you. There is so much content in each of your categories of specialty. You could put 1 billion pictures out. You could put tons of video out. You could be writing articles all day. Like, how do you figure out what goes into what you're making available every day? How do you figure it out? What works? What doesn't work? How do you, like, what are the key insights that you'd love everyone to walk away from? Like the nuggets of how do you figure out what to make available?
I'll start.
Whoever would like to start.
The great thing about our audience at the Knot is they come to us wanting a specific thing. So we want to be giving that to them every day. But more importantly, you get so caught up in the wedding planning process. When you talk about a legacy, I don't want anyone to look back on their wedding planning journey and be like, that was the worst time of my life. I gave away all my money. I lost all my friends and family, because that happens, and I don't want that to be the case. And no one at the Knot does, I promise. So what we try to look at every day, no matter what the content is how is it making our audience feel? And is it reminding them of why they're doing what they're doing? So with stories, we just recently, it's proposal season right now, which is a thing that I didn't know till I started. It's Thanksgiving through Valentine's Day. That's when everyone gets engaged for the most part. And so we were talking about our proposal season strategy, and we always celebrate like who had the most over-the-top proposal or what was super unique. And this year we knew we had such an engaged audience on stories that we said, why did you say yes? Or why did you propose? I don't want to hear someone jumped out of an airplane. I want to hear, why is this person your person? And so we rolled out a template, and we've been getting so many great stories back, because I think sometimes people feel intimidated on social media. Like maybe their stuff isn't good enough to share. So we've been rolling that out with our audience and having them share their love stories with us. And it's a beautiful thing. So I think that, to me, is the biggest guide in why we do what we do. I want to remind them every day that it's a love story and it's beautiful, and it's not just something that's going to stress you out and
Awesome.
be the worst year of your life, hopefully.
I would say it's definitely also passion that guides us. So it's about the stories and the things that really our team is most engaged about. So, for example, each year we have a big session where we sit together and think about what are the overall topic for the upcoming year. So this year was all about movies. So we sat down and we fixed 12 movies that anybody in the team was inspired by. And then from this overall topic we went down, and then we dived into data, of course, and had like a deep dive into search engine optimization, what people are searching about those kind of movies, and then what topics we could draw from those movies, so that you have a wide range of stuff that is derived from the topic of the movie. And then we put together passion and data and put a magazine together.
Awesome. Patrick, you want to?
You go ahead.
Well, yeah. So before every issue, we decide that, well, every issue is supposed to embrace as much of the diversity of New York as possible, and that's so many different levels. So with 10 people, it's almost impossible, but that's kind of like the the basic of it. This next issue is also a celebration of universal love because you have Pride Month coming up in New York in June, so we're going to have a little bit more focus on that topic. So we also try to make it a little bit seasonal. Then out of that content that we create for the print magazine, we have so much that we can share on social, and which is something, a process that, as I shared a little bit earlier, is something that we're still working on, figuring out the best strategy for that. You know, we have to kind of be able to adapt and play around a little bit. Yeah.
The reason I even got into Instagram or, found a place for myself is because this is a creative medium that allowed me to express my creativity. And I think that, for me, any of these platforms are just a way for me to play and figure it out. And of course, I have, business goals and I have to answer to clients, and there are a lot of details. But ultimately, when I think about really what I want to put on any of these channels is what's fun, try new things. Stories are a place, and that's one reason why I have loved stories, is because there's so much flexibility. People love video. You can add GIFs to things. You can, I can equally show, my gym selfie to give myself some affirmation, as I can to, show my street style shots. And I think really just being playful and taking a chance. Social media is actually really forgiving. And of course, maybe one post isn't going to do as well, or you won't get as much engagement, but you'll never know unless you try. And for me, and I'm super excited to see more about this feature that you rolled out today. I think it's super exciting. Also, I'll say, I don't really know anything. I've been in this a long time, and I have a lot of things to say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I know anything. Mauricio, who's here and is my right hand, we were just chatting yesterday about what does he think about how stories should be used? Brands maybe have it can be used in a more tightly edited, creative way. A person, maybe it can be a little bit more flexible. I don't know. We all have different opinions, and we can all play, and we can all kind of find our own voice. So it really comes back to being creative.
Do you feel pressure, or what's the relationship between your story creation and your relationship with advertisers?
I have done campaigns specifically on stories that didn't include static posts. That's fairly rare. Often, I find that there's a kind of package deal that a client will want a static Instagram post and then some stories included or something like that. I think along with all of the places where content can be, it's a conversation about what's included, for the price. Finding that right balance. But I've found that it's kind of run the gamut for me, just in terms of if clients are interested or not, but also the opportunities that I've had to include that.
Awesome, great. We can't let you all off the stage. Rolf, you started off by saying you incorporate stories about regular and unregular people. What's the most interesting unregular person you featured?
Unregular?
Well, you said unregular. We're not going to let you get away with this.
So I have to pinpoint the Mosaic Man, who is an icon in New York. He has put up a lot of mosaic art in East Village. He has been homeless. He's a veteran. He now lives in a subsidized apartment. He is on a little bit of LSD every day. So to be able to get some content and get some good interview, to dig deep with him was it was a challenge. And then the stories, once we started to get more intimate and he started opening up, was very kind of touching to me. So, he's still going strong. So you should go out in his village and explore his art. It's out there on light bulbs. What is it called? I'm Norwegian, by the way, so that's why I have some troubles with the language. Yeah, whatever. So go to East Village and explore.
The lights. It's on the lights. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Or yeah. Time for some quick questions if anyone has any. And maybe you can just say your name as well.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
My name is Shruti. I'm at FCB. I'm an art director. I have a question for Patrick. I'm wondering, through your content, how did you gain your audience's trust versus off the top of my head, GQ and Vogue? They are such a big publication, and I feel like the audience and readers would know that their opinions have come from deep thought. How did you, as an individual, gain your audience's trust?
Yeah, so the question, just so everybody could hear, is how did I gain my audience's trust as I'm not a big brand like Vogue or GQ? You know, one of the powers of social media and the reason that brands are so eager to work with people like me is it's less about establishing a sort of objective, place within the fashion or lifestyle world. It's about having a point of view. And people are, I think that when you're connecting to an individual whose point of view you really you admire or are interested in. So the trust is really through the series of activities on Instagram and whatever other platforms. People constantly seeing what you're putting out there and relating to it. It's about relationship as opposed to feeling like you're kind of like being given this information from on high. And for me, that was also really important to make sure that everything, all of my content on Instagram, I feel so importantly. When I've given presentations, one of the things I like to say is my Instagram content is only as good as what is happening in my real life. Because ultimately, what I'm creating and producing is a reflection of the things that I truly believe. So if I'm able to do wonderful things, visit great places, have a point of view, think thoughtfully about my own style. I've also worked very hard on creating several other businesses that were related to dining, entertainment, performance, like bringing people together in real life. I have an app called the Liquor Cabinet, things that I've done outside of Instagram to showcase that not only do I have a point of view, but that I'm truly passionate about it. Those are the types of things that I think are really valuable in making that connection.
Awesome. Yes, make sure you have a microphone.
Hi, is it on?
And again, if you can share your name, that would be great.
Hello, hi. I'm Aaron, Communications Director. I was wondering for all of you about any sort of pitfalls you'd want to mention about closely aligning your brand, your story, with paid partnerships with other brands. Sort of after those partnerships, if something negative happens or something that's not sort of mission aligned, sort of how to avoid those or what you've done afterwards to sort of course correct after any sort of brand partnership.
Maybe I start. I think it's very important to do expectation management right from the start. So a good brief in the beginning, then also even through thinking it through till the end with aligned objectives. It doesn't make sense if you don't know what the partner really wants exactly when you start to create content for them, because then it can only go wrong. So a very good alignment of expectation, I think, is the most important part in having a successful relationship. And then if something goes wrong, then don't hide, be open and really be very active in communication. I mean, in the end, you will always find a solution, and in digital media, it happens so easily that something goes wrong. And it, as Patrick says, is quick. It's gone very quick.
Well, yeah, we've had a printed ad where something that was not supposed to be in the printed ad was printed. And that's something that, of course, then have some consequences. And to make up for that, we have an open dialogue with the client on how we can make good for it. And that ended up with us throwing an event with them and inviting a lot of our audience and some micro-influencers that we work a lot with, because it happens, and then when it's in print, it's harder to make good for because it's out there and it's going to live for 6 months. So then it's kind of like just, all right, we made a mistake and we will make up for it. That's one example. I have plenty.
But you really can't, I mean, over communication or preempting that communication is key. Like the more that you know when you're entering into a conversation is so important. For me, it's also, I have my own being an individual, I have to be very specific and selective with the partners that I'm connecting with because of this relationship that I've built with my audience. That there is really a trust in my viewpoint, not just in sort of like me as a brand, where I think there's a little bit more flexibility. So I think long and hard about each relationship. Obviously, if there's a brand that I already love and am excited about, then it's a no-brainer. Then of course I want to partner with them. If it's something that that I have to kind of, I mean, to be very candid, obviously there's like levers that I pull. If it's a brand that wouldn't be my first choice, but I still maybe use in my daily life, if the fee is sort of like where I need it to be, then absolutely we can find an agreement. If there's a brand that I would never use, I will definitely not say yes. So there's sort of like a range in which, as long as I feel that the kind of like balance is all there, then that's really important to me. But ultimately, I need to make sure that I'm maintaining my integrity.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. It's a great way to kick things off. Thank you.
Thank you again, Patrick, Rolf, Antonia, and Whitney. We will now be taking a 15-minute break. We ask that everyone be back in their seats at 10:50. There will be refreshments out by the foyer. Also take advantage of our photo booth.